Very interesting article published at thegrayzone.com, which is a website that anyone who's a fan of this channel should definitely be reading. I'll get into more into that later, but there is a little tidbit in this article. It's not the main focus of the article, which I found to be quite satisfying. Bellingcat is a mainstream-ish, it's not a typical corporate news outlet, it's not like a CNN. It claims to be sort of an open source intelligence type of network of citizen journalists. These people, they're a little more edgy, not really in their language, but in that, they don't play by the rules, they don't stick to a strict corporate structure. I don't think that they have producers or editors in the same way as other places, although maybe I'm getting their structure a little wrong, but they're supposed to be a little more credible in that sense. They're supposed to be more independent, put it that way. That's how they bill themselves. But if you read Bellingcat's website, it's interesting. Most of their reporting seems to line up pretty well with the establishment narrative. And so for years, people have kind of written Bellingcat off. They've never really gained clout amongst independent media, but they certainly gained clout amongst the establishment because they supposedly had a knack for, finding things and doing real journalism and getting scoops, which to a lot of us who are outside of the establishment bubble, we looked at what Bellingcat was doing and thought, gee, it kind of just looks like they're being fed information from the CIA and other Western intelligence organizations. It doesn't really seem like, they're doing, hard work and putting their nose to the grindstone every day and churning out, journalism, because every story they publish just happens to benefit Western intelligence narratives. And so they would write stories about, foreign policy a lot of the time, the war in Syria. I think they go back to maybe even the war in Libya. I don't remember if they were around back then, but I think so. And so they very reliably would publish scoops which made Assad look good and satisfied sort of the narrative requirements of what was being put out from the CIA. And this was all just supposed to be a coincidence, I guess, because, reality and facts just happened to line up with what the CIA wanted. To borrow a phrase from Stephen Colbert, reality, as Bellingcat saw it, just had a pro-CIA bias. And so for as long as they've been around, we kind of just left it at that. Those of us who are not fans of Bellingcat look at them as CIA shills. The people who like Bellingcat look at them as people who do good, hard work and find, good scoops and are totally organic and independent. Well, this article in the Gray Zone, which publishes a bunch of leaked emails between someone who appears to be a pretty influential British journo by the name of Paul Mason. He's a lefty journo over there. He seems to play a big role in the British left. And he also is very much in the camp supporting whatever foreign policy the transatlantic deep state is in favor of at any given time. Right now, of course, he has a Stand With Ukraine in his Twitter bio. He is doing, big Stand With Ukraine marches through London, and he went to Kiev on tour to visit Zelensky, although I don't know if he actually got to visit him in person, but that's what everybody's doing. That's the cool thing to do right now, or not so much in the last couple weeks, but it was for a while. It was trendy. Everyone wanted to go to Kiev. And he's got like 620-some thousand followers on Twitter, which, considering the UK is a much smaller country than the US, that seems pretty impressive to me. He has, over 600,000 followers on Twitter. I believe he used to work for the BBC, so this is a well-traveled establishment lefty journo. And he decided to try and form a conspiracy with a man by the name of Khan. I can't remember his first name, maybe Emil or Amil or something like that, Khan, and bring in a bunch of other people, and they wanted to organize some kind of smear campaign or legal campaign to ruin the Gray Zone and put them out of business because these people have a personal vendetta against the Gray Zone, because I guess the Gray Zone has written unfavorable articles about them in the past. But that's not my focus today. My focus is on something in these emails, a few details, in which they discussed Bellingcat. And Paul Mason kind of brought up, in his ideas, he was brainstorming about who could we bring into a part of this conspiracy to try and take down the Gray Zone Project. And he brought up Bellingcat. And he also compared the Gray Zone directly to Bellingcat, because he was making the case that the Gray Zone is not an independent, journalism website. They are a Russian or Chinese intelligence cutout, and they are fed narratives by what is it? Is it the GRU? I believe is the foreign intelligence arm, of the Russian government, and by the Chinese, whatever their version of the KGB CIA is. And he said, they do kind of the same thing the Bellingcat does. They're fed a steady stream of reports from intelligence officials, and they publish them as leaks and as scoops, and that's where they get their content from. And so it's pretty funny. He seemed to be just projecting, because there's no evidence that anybody has, that anyone's published, that the Gray Zone Project is literally just being fed, a steady diet of instructions from the Kremlin or from Beijing, and that Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and what's her name, Anya, and the other people there, that they take whatever their marching orders are from Moscow and from Beijing, and they publish that on their website, and they just vomit it onto their keyboard and hit publish. But this Paul Mason guy, he is coming out and saying that that's exactly what Bellingcat does. And he's no as I said, he's a very pro-imperialist kind of guy. He loves the MI6, he loves the CIA, he hates Assad, he hates Putin, he loves Ukraine, he thinks that Zelensky is a hero, he worked for the BBC, all these things. He's a right-thinking person. And yet, he, in this article, and I'll link to the article, says that Bellingcat is fed a steady diet of Western intelligence, and that he actually suggested, when we need to know, when we want to talk to, Western intelligence and to the spooks, even if we can't directly contact them and talk to them about, hey, how should we take down the Gray Zone, we can just talk to the guys at Bellingcat, because they basically can give us intelligence advice by proxy. Because, the Bellingcat guys, they're basically CIA MI6. They don't officially cash checks from them, although Bellingcat is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, which is, I forgot to mention this earlier, that is not even a CIA cutout. That is an NGO that is funded by Congress. And the purpose of the National Endowment for Democracy is to be a NGO version of the CIA. That's explicit. I mean, you can find that anywhere. You just do a little bit of digging into the NED. That's what they're about. The NED was started under Ronald Reagan. It was founded by a Trotskyite, and when you combine Trotskyites with foreign policy, you get neoconservatism. And it's trying to bring about regime change. That's what Trotskyites like. And so the NED does out in the open what the CIA used to do in secret. They do some of the dirtier work that the CIA doesn't want to get caught directly doing anymore, like what the CIA did in Chile when they helped overthrow Allende, when they were cutting checks to the truckers, paying them off to strike, or co-opting journalists through Operation Mockingbird. Now we have the NED doing that out in the open. So the NED has funded Bellingcat. So that's Bellingcat's direct connection to Western intelligence. But now, according to Paul Mason, who is a guy who would know. He's a guy who he's friendly. He wasn't saying this to slight Bellingcat. He wasn't saying this as an own on Bellingcat. He was saying this in private to other people, and I guess the guy who he was talking to, Khan, has directly worked with Bellingcat and is a big fan of theirs. They were just talking about in private, oh yeah, Bellingcat launders Western intelligence. And so this doesn't change my opinion or anything. I mean, obviously it just confirms my bias, but coming from someone who has every incentive to say the opposite, to hear this from him in private, that is all the confirmation that I need personally. We already had the monetary connection. Now we have, an alleged, although coming from a pretty, I think, this is that's a way of putting it. Reliable isn't really a credible source. It is credible coming from someone who has every incentive to say the opposite, for them to say that this is in fact what Bellingcat is doing. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.